Okay, so just from the top, I have some people who are in this call, but I'm just going to talk over it and then I'll release this recording. So yeah, welcome to Chasing Career Success, what Tasi is learning from job hunting. I'm going to make this real quick because I know you guys are busy, and I don't want you to waste too much time listening to me talk. But this will be uploaded to YouTube, so you can put it on 1.5 speed. So as I just want to repeat myself. I already said this, but then I started recording. So you you can still some people are worried about they just want to make a difference and they might say, oh, I'm not really here for the money. um, I feel like that's I can understand that it's very optimistic, but hopefully you understand that it is good to make more money, and also optimize your career and your opportunities, and you can do that while also doing everything that you wanted to do when you started a career or wanted to pursue a career in social work, right? So you can make a difference to your community, and why not do that while also having a better career? I apologize for the siren car in the background. um, So yeah, so I'll start off with networking tips. I've got a bunch of tips here, but starting off with just general networking tips. Um, and some of these tips will be obvious, and some won't be. So we're starting with this tip here: maximize the chance for serendipity. Serendipity is just a fancy way to say like random things that happen that are useful to you, like just like lucky moments where you have opportunities that show up that you did not expect. And the way that you can maximize that is just to take opportunities around you and expose yourself to more people and more environments. And there's all different kinds of ways to do that. Many of you are much more social than me, so I think you know about this. You can go to expos, informal events, social events. You know, people go to social events. You can get professional contacts in social events. Doing volunteer work, which I think many of you are doing, community organizations, and all the church stuff that you're doing. I'm sure that's extremely useful as well. But you want to diversify, so you don't want to just be locked into that. There's tons of university clubs. I know I'm speaking to third and fourth year, so maybe that might not be super relevant if you're going to be leaving soon. But there's also you can still join university clubs when you leave the uni. By the way, that's actually totally allowed. Each club is allowed 20% non-university students. Um, okay, so on to other obvious stuff. Don't burn bridges when you are making connections. Just don't ever be mean to people. It's never worth it, even if they're being mean to you. Honestly, I've had these moments, because it might come back to bite you in the future. Be generous in terms of like helping out people. So when you help people, of course, they're more likely to return the favor, but don't be too eager because that makes you look maybe too submissive, and you might be demeaning yourself by doing that. And it's hard to explain exactly what I mean by this, but you don't want to be jumping and be like, "Oh, I'll do this for you, and I'll do this, and I'll do your garden, and I'll do your taxes." Like nothing like that. But as an example, I had a student that I met, and he told me he wanted to get into the job that I've gotten accepted into, and I just like, "Oh, bro, I'll tell you all about the admission process, and also I can tell you what the salary grade will be and everything they told me." And that's just going to help you when you want to apply because I know what it's like to be in your shoes, right? So it's just, yeah, be gracious and generous. I think that is useful. Okay, I need to minimize these things, so I'll come back to them. So be well presented. This is also obvious, and I'll come back to this, but this is good for networking. Use LinkedIn. We'll also come back to this. It kind of sucks. I don't like LinkedIn, but it's unavoidable in terms of professional, like you can have a career without LinkedIn, but you are limiting yourself if you don't have a LinkedIn. And it just seems like it's so much of it is self promotion, which doesn't come naturally to a lot of us specific people. But I'll come back to this. You do have to have a LinkedIn, in my opinion. When you meet people, and you say you're at a nice event, and you're like, "Hey, I'm a social work student," or "I'm just graduating soon, and I want blah 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 jobs." If you make a good connection with someone, follow up your meeting by sending a connection request on LinkedIn, um, or you can send an email if they don't have a LinkedIn. And don't try to add them on Instagram or Facebook. That's weird because people that's like social stuff. That's like personal. So LinkedIn, you can be sending connection requests all the time. That's kind of normal in terms of how LinkedIn works. To the people who are actually here right now, am I all good? Am I coming through loud and clear so far? Okay, cool, cool, cool. Like I said, I am going a bit fast, but that's because I know people are like me and have short attention spans. This is one that's not that obvious. Okay, can you please learn how to give a good handshake? If you don't, that is, I mean, it's not a massive problem, but it like you don't understand how much of an impression it actually will make on someone I've met students who I shake their hands, and shaking hands isn't that common, right? Isn't as common because of COVID. Um, but I've shook hands of students before, like here in school of social work, but also like across the uni, and it surprises me how many of them they like give me their hand, and it's like an overcooked noodle, and I'm just looking at them, being like, "Can you have some? Can you just have some confidence in yourself?" And it may sound like so superficial. Of course, your self worth, your worth as a person, is not based on how like your handshake is. That's of course that's ridiculous. But people aren't rational, and people will make an impression on you based on something like that. Okay, so shake firmly and confidently. Listen, if you see me on campus, we can practice this. I do not mind. We'll just use disinfectant afterwards because of COVID. But we can, yeah, shake firmly, confidently. Don't shake too hard. That's weird and aggressive. Don't shake too limp. That's also weird and unreliable. Makes you seem unreliable and uncommitted. Oh, and here's another random one, a random tip that's actually quite good. If you're at an event, hold your drink in your left hand if it's a cold drink, because when you shake someone's hand, you don't want it to be cold. Okay, it's another subconscious thing. You want to keep your hand warm. Another thing, this is also obvious but worth reminding you of, is show enthusiasm when you're networking. And this is not always easy. You know, we have a bunch of stuff going on. If you're watching this recording, you might have children or family obligations, and you might be busy. But act like you want to be there, and act like you are passionate about what you do. I certainly hope you actually are passionate about what you do. But that should come through. And passion is really attractive in terms of making you look like someone that people want to network with. um, Honestly, even it doesn't matter what job you're doing. Think of a job that you think is not like that sexy or that cool. If you can talk about it passionately, people will be like, "Heck yeah, that person is like onto it, and I want to be around them." This gets better with practice. Okay, so that's networking. Also, shout out to my girlfriend who is job hunting as well, and it actually has given me a bunch of these tips from her experience, and she's kind of in the corporate sector, and a lot of this comes from corporate. But just because it comes from corporate doesn't mean it's not useful to you. Okay, so in terms of being well presented and why it matters, and this is both online and offline, clean up your social media if you haven't already. Now, it might be a problem or might not be a problem for you depending on how you've behaved on social media for the past like 20 years. So how long has Facebook been going? So it hasn't been 20 years. It's been like it's really things started to kick off with Facebook, right? So Facebook started in 2008. So if you're like me, you've been posting on Facebook and other social media platforms for a while. Um, so I've been using it for a while, and you might have a questionable history. And by questionable, it's like, oh, that time I got wasted with my friends in the park, and I posted a bunch of pictures. Like that stuff might still be on your Facebook, and I suggest that you consider cleaning it up or deleting it. And I'm not saying that all of you have this problem. I just know this from experience that I got to like 27 and I was like, hold on. If you go through even like the publicly available photos, if you go on my profile, there's some stuff that's maybe not that flattering for potential employers. So I went through and I basically deleted everything before 2018. You don't have to go that drastic, but consider how you appear on social media. Same thing goes for your Instagram. Um, some of this can be avoided just by making everything private, but also consider that all the people on your friends list. So say that someone on your friends list can see some of your photos and they can communicate some stuff about your history to someone else. I mean, I don't want to make you too paranoid, okay? But just be cognizant of these things. Just be aware of how you might come across online. I do know people like assume that your potential employer is going to stalk you on social media. Just let's put it like that. Make a complete LinkedIn profile. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, or if you have one of those ones where you just kind of made it sort of, but you don't even have a good photo of yourself and you haven't like properly made it, I really suggest that you do that at some point. Maybe not right now because you're still studying and you're not maybe not job hunting right now. But even if you are one of those people that gets a job and you're like ready to go into that job after you graduate, um, it doesn't matter whether you have a job locked in. Okay, you should still have a really good LinkedIn, and that's related to another point I'll come back to. They have good workshops about with this at CDES in the city, but you can also talk to me if you want to talk about like making a good LinkedIn profile. Feel free to look up my LinkedIn and see how that's set up. But the key things in here is like include a personal narrative about yourself. And I think I do. Yeah, I'll come back to what I mean by personal narrative, and also um, post activities. So if you spend enough time on LinkedIn, someone will get a promotion, and you don't just quietly get a promotion and say nothing. You get a promotion, and you're like, I just want to thank the team. I want to thank everyone. Like blah blah blah, and you always have to announce it to people. And that sounds really annoying, and I don't like personally. I hate doing it, but again, it is something that is probably going to pay off because it just makes you more visible in terms of being like, oh, this person is doing something. Connect with peers and staff. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to make connections with you. Other staff would also be happy. People like, if you're, people like Laura Chubb and other staff. Yeah, most of them would be more than happy, I'm sure. But also your peers as well. So just having more connections looks good. Um, and this is something that I wanted to mention. There's not many people in the call at the moment, but it is really good to have a professional photo of yourself. I've just had random ones taken of me, and like in the school where I do my PhD, they had them for free, and I went to a few conferences, they did it for free, so I just use those. Um, I'm considering whether we can organize something at Pacifica Success where we can actually offer this service, like have a day where we can photograph people and get you some nice photos that you can put on your social media, like especially LinkedIn, and also just professional stuff like your icon on Google. Um, if you're watching this recording, hopefully some people are watching this recording. But also, if you're in this call and you want to follow up on this, let me know because I might be able to get some funding and we can like get a photographer in. Worst case scenario, if we're really poor, I have a camera and I can take decent photos. Certainly better than like some of the phone photos that people generally tend to have. Okay, so have a good photo, a professional one. LinkedIn is not the same as social media. You don't have to be friends with people to connect. You can just kind of like sort of know them and connect anyway. That's kind of normal actually on LinkedIn. And then this is kind of just, I guess I already said this. Post about your accomplishments in your industry, particularly in your industry. So this, I think a lot of Pacific people, we kind of try to stay humble, and maybe this doesn't come as naturally, but it's worth announcing these things. I graduated from BSW. I did such and such help with my church. Um, and a lot of these things you wouldn't even consider being accomplishments actually are accomplishments. You could even post about like doing group work and successfully doing a group project with your classmates. Even that I think is definitely worth putting out. Okay, so we're still in being well presented. So this is all online stuff, and then also in person, it pays to be well presented as well. Now, I'm a bit too busy to be digging up all the empirical evidence on this, but I think this is fairly self-evident: is that humans are superficial, and appearance matters to the impression that people make on you. And I don't want to patronize you. I think you already know this, right? So be well groomed, be tidy. It's when you're networking or when you're just in a professional capacity. But something that's a bit less obvious is that I would say, and this, I'm not 100% sure about this, but in my experience professionally and being in different kinds of offices, it does give off a good impression to always be slightly overdressed for the occasion. So take a look around you and you go into an office. I don't know how people dress generally in social work, but take a look around you and just dress the way everyone else is dressing, like in terms of that level of formality, but just a little bit more. And that kind of that should, again, this is kind of more an opinion. I don't have any evidence for this. And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. But I think this would make a good impression on on people and kind of showing competence, right? So, but if that's not possible, just be tidy. Okay. Um, Again, I mean, like you probably know more about the social work profession than me. But if I had a social worker show up to my house in a hoodie, I mean, I wouldn't be like, oh, this person is totally incompetent. But I would be like, surely they could have put a bit more effort in. Like, surely they could have, come across as a bit more of a professional who's onto it, who's going to help me out. But maybe, maybe that's just my opinion. Now, here's something that I've dealt with, and maybe many of you deal with. If you are Pacific, you buy stuff off the rack, it's often not going to fit you. Okay, I have this problem. Buying pants for me is a nightmare. And I hate to think about it, but I had to. And so, and once you start earning money in your job, or maybe earning more money, it may be good to consider a good tailor. I don't think it's as expensive as it sounds. There's actually good online. Um, I use a online site called the Tailor Store. That's not super expensive, and they will actually make a garment to your measurements that you send to them. And if they get it wrong, so if you give them your measurements and they send it back to you, and you get the garment and it doesn't fit you, you can show them pictures of how it doesn't fit you, and they will adjust the measurements and send you another garment for free that does fit you. And that happened with a shirt that I bought recently. I'm pretty sure the tailor store is still operating. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe you don't have this problem, but I certainly do. Okay, so the next point here, this is a pretty short one. Just think about a narrative for yourself, and what that means is that people like stories, and if you think about how your life actually is, I can think about myself. My life, it's not like a screenwriter or an author sat down and wrote my life. My life has just been a bunch of random stuff. Some things happen. I didn't choose to do something. Some things just happen to me. Sometimes I do make decisions. Sometimes that contradicts earlier decisions I made. And it's just a mess. Like everyone's life is kind of a mess usually. In terms of like, it's not actually a cohesive story. I mean, it would be hard to make a good movie out of your life. That's again, this kind of goes for everyone because that's just the nature of your lives. But what you should try to do is interpret your not, well frame your life or interpret it in a way that it does seem like a story. What is it they say on social media? Like my life is like a movie, um, something like that, where you're kind of telling us like I grew up here and then I moved here and then I really had this passion for helping people, and that's what led me to this the school of social work, and then I blah 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 and went through all these things. And just imagine like you're at a bar or you're at like a function with someone or a church, for example, and you're just just telling them your entire life story, and you tell it in a way that's interesting and that is flattering for you professionally. That's what I mean by making a narrative. And again, this sounds kind of cringy, and it kind of and it may be, but again, this is the kind of thing that makes you just more appealing. I had a meeting with someone who was a partner at a big management, well, not a big financial services firm because I was looking for jobs. So I had a meeting with this person who was a partner. This person probably makes like $1 million a year, and I had a one-on-one meeting with them, and we had coffee. And this person, she sat down across from me, and she said, like we were like saying hello, and then she sat across from me. She just said, "So, tell me about yourself. Who are you?" And then just said nothing and just stared at me. And I was like, "Oh boy!" And I had to tell the story about myself. Um, and I think I did a pretty good job on the spot to make it seem like a good narrative, like a story. But it's kind of better if you prepare it in advance, is what I'm saying. If you're wondering what this actually looks like, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to go through that. Are you still with me? People who are in the video call? Cool, cool. Um, Here's another one that's not as obvious, and I'll keep this kind of short. Don't be too loyal to any single organization. And I don't mean the fact like you should go in there and just like be a terrible employee. I don't mean it like that. I mean it. You should not feel that you should stay. You have to stay at the same place forever. Um, so this is especially true in the private sector. It used to be the case where you join a company, like back in our parents' or our grandparents' generation. You join a company and you stay. There's an expectation you stay with that company for like a long time, if not for life. And you kind of just get promoted and you get better. And it's not how it is anymore, especially in the private sector. But I'd say the same thing in some government sectors, and also like NGO and not for profit sector. There's not an expectation that you stay with the company. It's just a transaction. It's quid pro quo, meaning that they give you money, you give them work. You don't have any loyalty to them. You might take off. They don't have any loyalty to you. They might fire you. Again, not every organization is like this, but this is, I think, a good frame of mind to be in. There's data to show that the average length of employment in North America is about 3 years at each organization. That's way shorter than it used to be. And basically, the long and short of it is that you can make more money faster by hopping around between jobs. Okay, and you might find this kind of repulsive, that this idea of doing this, but like everyone does this. I've talked to professors who've done this. I've talked to people who are working for NGOs who are like, yeah, I'm just, I got this better job offer over there, so I went over there. I'm making more money. I'm doing the same thing I was doing before, making the same difference to my community, but now I make $50,000 more. Okay, um, job hopping. So if you have a bunch of like you go to different positions and you have that on your LinkedIn and your CV, it doesn't hold any stigma anymore. People aren't going to look at that and say, "Oh, wow, this person is such like a so flaky." No, they're going to be like, "This person knows what's up. They know an opportunity where they see it. They're competent and they're desired." So maybe we want to desire them as well. Of course, this only works if you're not burning all your former employees, and we'll talk a bit about that in a second. Don't do that. And before I go on, I do want to say this doesn't mean that you can't progress within a single organization. That does occur, and in fact, like I won't go into detail, but the job I'm going into is with the government ministry, and that is one of the few positions where there's like an expectation that you stick around for a while. It's like almost a lifetime job. We'll see. It remains to be seen whether I'll actually treat it like that. But yeah, so you stay in a role for a few years, then you find a newer, higher paying job elsewhere, and think of this like a ladder. Think of it like you hop around um, between. So when you go to another organization, you want to get paid more, but you also want to be in a more senior position. Usually, you either at least want to go horizontally, so you go to another company and your position there is the same as the one you had before, but ideally you go up a bit and you just get a more senior position that gets paid more in another company or organization. Um, Now, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I don't have experience with this. This is just what multiple people have told me. It's crazy how consistent this is. So many people have told me this. So I'm just relaying that to you, and I trust you to be intelligent enough to just consider your own personal situation before you go hopping for the in the next 10 years of your careers. But keep this in mind, please. Um, this also applies to the public sector. I know that in Wellington, between all the government ministries, there's just this culture of like people always hop around between ministries. They'll go between the Ministry of Business and Innovation, and they'll go over to the Treasury, or they go over to Ministry of Education or whatever. So there's heaps of hopping around there. And that you might be wondering, oh, and I think this should also apply to NGOs. In fact, I've seen this with NGOs as well. You might be asking the question, how do I avoid burning bridges? Um, take the job seriously. I should no, not say when you leave it. She doesn't when you are in it. So take the job seriously, obviously. So do a good job. That's obvious, but also leave behind a good impression. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to first of all be nice to people. You already know that, but when you uh, leave, leave a good legacy for yourself. Like the people, there's going to be people that have to take over from you. Make it easy for them. Like I'll be leaving this job here at the university soon, and I'm going to organize a bunch of files and guides for the people that will be taking over the classes that I'm teaching. And that just way, like people, in the future when I leave, people aren't going to be like, "Oh, Tasi, that guy. Oh my gosh, it was such a mess when he left. We had to pick up so many pieces." No, instead, I want them to be like, "Oh yeah, no, Tasi, we love Tasi. Yeah, they made so many good improvements of the course, and he's so handsome, etc." Okay, so just this is a short one, and we move on to the end, which I have some homework for you. So just remember, you're not limited to social work. You have a social work degree, but the nature of the job market now is that you can use a degree like a social work degree to get into adjacent industries or industries that are related but not exactly the same. I know guys that are working in management consulting that have a history degree. And I know people that work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade who have a biology degree. So don't think that you are just limited to a whole life of social work. You can be doing other stuff as well with your degree, or if you combine your degree with other experience in the industry or in wherever you wanted to be doing social work. Okay, so don't think that your career is limited by your degree. I think by gaining experience as a social worker, you can find these adjacent careers. What exactly those might look like, I'm not. I mean, you would know more about this than me, so hopefully you're thinking about these things. I know people very close to me who are going into roles like running programs for youth. That's not technically social work, but it is the kind of thing where you want a social work skill set. And those are like decent, those are well-paying jobs. Actually getting paid more than your like standard starting salary for a social worker. Um, and they're doing real good in the community, I should say. So yeah, you don't just have to be someone that has social worker in their job description. It can be other things. Another example, I know someone who was a nurse, and they actually shifted into consulting, and now they're earning actually kind of crazy money. Now, of course, that's not your only motivator, but consider that. Um, and yeah, you can do youth work, community work, other important non-social work roles. You can also work for NGOs like Lava, you can do things like that. Now, one thing actually I didn't put on here, and I'll add right now, because I'll send this document out to people, is do extracurricular stuff. Actually, I won't do that. I'll just say it. Um, when you go job hunting, like everyone's got a degree these days, right? What sets you apart is the extra stuff you've done. And I think so many of our students, especially because you work with your family, and like your family stuff matters, by the way, but I'll come back to that. Your stuff with your work with your family, your community, your churches, that is extracurricular stuff, and that's the kind of thing that can make you more attractive as an employee. So you just need to be comfortable articulating that and saying that, yeah, oh yeah, I did this thing with my church, or like I do leader stuff with my church, or I organized a funeral for my family, and I show leadership in this capacity. So do extracurricular stuff. A lot of the stuff you're already doing could be considered extracurricular and additive to what you're doing, and consider other opportunities to do extracurricular stuff. Things like volunteering, getting involved with clubs. I'm happy to discuss if you want to ask me about it. I'll just quickly end with homework. What I want you to do is just think about. Actually, I made these bullet points, numbered bullet points. So think about whether you need a professional photo. We can organize a photo shoot. Maybe I need to talk to to Tim about this. Make a LinkedIn profile, and if you already have one, think about how it could be improved. You can just send me the link to your LinkedIn, and I can have a look at it and be like, oh, give you some tips. Or you can go to CDES or all kinds of other online guides. Think about what your personal narrative is. Um, you can also talk to Tasi about this and consider whether you need to clean up your social media. I'm happy to talk about any of these things, and it's not just now. So it doesn't matter if it's like 2 years from now, and I'm in a different job, and you want to link up with me and ask me about these things, or just ask me general advice about career stuff. Again, I'm not a total expert, but I'm happy to have these conversations. It doesn't even matter if I'm at the uni anymore. Okay, you know who I am, and you know how to contact me. Okay, I'm gonna stop this recording now, but yeah, hopefully you that was useful for you. Bye bye.